My question is very simple. Are these parlays a result of the unpredictable policies of Donald Trump? Is it a fallout of what has happened in last 60 days? Or does it have a momentum of its own, not to deprive the agency of actors involved in Beijing and New Delhi?
There is no doubt Trump's tariffs have definitely added to this positive momentum in China-India relationship. But if you remember the kind of change that happened following the Kazan meeting of Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping happened in October, which is way before January inauguration of President Trump. And in that sense, it's been a gradual process. To me, I wouldn't call it a recast. I think at best it's a process of thawing of a relationship where both sides are indicating inclination to craft that reset potentially. And in that sense, both are making very, let's say, cautious and calculated gestures of opening up to each other in looking at areas where their interests can align. But they are still very cautious about things. And the immediate trigger, of course, as you mentioned, could be a recent slapping of 50% of tariffs on Indian exports to United States by Donald Trump, which has seen both Foreign Minister and his very senior leader, Politburo member Wang Yi, and also China's ambassador Xu Feiyong in New Delhi, both mentioning or alluding to the bullying that world is facing, indicating that in that context, China and India can explore greater cooperation and working together. And of course, even more immediate could be the fact that China as a host country would like to make sure the Prime Minister of India, the largest population country, second largest economy within Shanghai Cooperation Organization, attends that meeting and makes his value addition. And I think this meeting that Wang Yi just now had with Prime Minister Narendra Modi is something which is an important, exciting inflection point. Because if you remember, Wang Yi's last visit during March of 2022 was virtually a disaster. Till his flight landed in Delhi at that time, one was not even sure that if he will be actually coming to Delhi, because he had just gone before that to Islamabad to address the plenary session of Organization of Islamic Conference, where he had said few things about Kashmir, and then of course went to Kabul from there. And therefore, there was a very, very angry responses from India at that time. And of course, he was not allowed to have any meeting with Prime Minister of India at that time. And that shows there is a bit of a change from then to now. And that has seen certain piecemeal actions taking place. But these are to fructify and materialize over a period of time. So I wouldn't call it a kind of a reset.
Okay.
At best, it's an inclination to potentially clinch a reset, perhaps in bilateral relations.
Okay, diplomacy is close my conversation. There is also an issue which I require, that the topic which I touched with you yesterday. It's about the perception, the perception within the civil society in India vis-a-vis China, and the perception of India vis-a-vis the civil society of China. Is that also an issue?
Definitely. In fact, for about 20 to 25 years, we have seen Chinese leader talking about public opinion, something that they believe matters in their interactions and rapprochement with India. And of course, India is more than a democracy. Sometimes we say excess of democracy. And Indian public opinion also matters. And both sides have their great share of mutual skepticism, which you can see at various levels, including at the level of street and of course all the way up among the leaders as well. So for example, yes, the lofty high moral positions are excellent. All the right sounding words you heard during Wang Yi's meeting with Ajit Doval and Dr. Jaishankar are fantastic. But both sides remain very cautious and concerned. For example, what is it that worries China the most about India? It is India's growing proximity with the United States. Now reverse that argument, and Chinese, of course, will welcome tensions between India and United States. And the fact that India is still continuing to engage United States in several other sectors despite a limited area of tariffs, is something that Chinese are very well aware, and they want to utilize this opportunity to showcase their camaraderie with Indian leadership, which India is willing to engage and take advantage of. For example, India is gradually opening up to sort of Chinese investments in India. You can see voices from very important quarters in Indian establishment talking about jointmanship and joint projects in many by involving Chinese firms. That definitely is exciting because Chinese firms today have enormous leverages and leadership in many sectors. But when India wants to talk about India's, accepting Chinese FDI with technology transfers, then of course Chinese will decide what kind of technology is given to India, how far it goes beyond India's borders. Naturally, just like United States is also concerned when it gives technology to India as to where else it could go from India in that sense. So what I'm saying is, yes, there is a positive piecemeal momentum which we have seen from October last year, accelerated partly by this whole new tariff tirades of President Trump, his growing cultivation of Pakistan military and so on. But it's a gradual momentum which definitely is going to do good to both sides because they will build better kind of developmental partnerships. And as Einar Tengen said, this could even be seen as providing India a certain amount of leverage in negotiating with Donald Trump. That, here it is. And you see right now several people in United States, John Bolton, the former national security advisor, is saying that Donald Trump's tariffs are pushing India towards China and Russia. So there are multiple voices both in India and in China and in United States. So to answer to your question, yes, perceptions increasingly matter on all sides and leaders are becoming increasingly conscious of those perceptions. So therefore, there is a certain amount of caution as both China and India start rebuilding a certain amount of relationship, which has seen a positive momentum, but it's going to take certain amount of time before it moves forward. And what Donald Trump will do, whether those sort of trade will deal with United States and the tariffs coming down to average of 15 to 20%, whether that will reduce India's excitement in engaging China, we'll have to see in coming months as to how India-US relations move forward.
Okay, thank you all of you. Thank you so much for joining me on this conversation.